Good evening and welcome back to the Online Wine Tasting Club, or if you're joining us for the first time, a huge welcome to you too.
Fantastic. Yeah, good to see everybody. It feels
like it's been a while, doesn't it?
It's been a while.
It's only been a month.
But I think it's because in between, I went and did the Alsace tasting at the Oxford Wine Festival. It was a lot of fun, and a few people from the club came and said hi, which was really nice. So it's always good to see some people. So good evening to everybody. And today we are doing all things. Well, I say all things English.
Yeah,
we're doing English, and I'm going to say this, and then there's going to be some geeks in here go, "Oh, I know all about this." But what we've tried to do is, I think, England. When we talk about England, a lot of people go, "Oh, it's sparkling."
Yeah.
And then we got
over the last few years.
Then we got over sparkling
Bacchus
a little bit, and then we started talking about Bacchus and Chardonnay, but couldn't possibly do any red wines. And we thought today, we're back at some wineries that we've been to. I think all the wineries that we're looking at today, we've visited, and you'll have seen them on the club before. So you might know some of these wineries. Yep. So if we're telling you stuff, you're already going to go, Jamie, this is really boring. Please tell us something exciting. But what we love about these wineries, A, they're friends of us and friends of the show, and we want to work with good people who make good wine, and that's really exciting. But B, I think, they do the standard stuff really, really well. Like, our first wine that we're going to do, Balfour make fantastic Chardonnay. Oceanbrook make great sparkling. Flint make phenomenal Charmat method wines. But I think with what we've got here is where they've been able to, play a little bit, push the envelope a little bit, and do something that you might not expect to be coming out of an English vineyard.
It's fair to say, I think. Now, I'm probably going to be being a little bit controversial, but there's a wonderful podcast which is hosted by two of our friends. One is Fergus Elias, who's the head winemaker of the Balfour winery at the Hush Heath estate, and the other is our good friend Lee Isaacs, who joins us to present every now and then. And Ferg likes to joke about, how if you want to make the big bucks, then perhaps getting into winemaking, especially in England, is not the best approaches. So you have to have a passion for it. You have to have a love for it, which means you're probably a little bit insane. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we like it in this country where people are a little bit quirky. We love it where de Havilland goes out and designs an aeroplane to go and fight all of the German things which are made out of precision steel. And he goes, let's make it out of balsa wood instead. Or let's make a bomb that bounces across a lake. Or we love a bit of quirkiness. And so we don't have all of those big, heavy rule books that regions like Châteauneuf-du-Pape do, that tell you must have this bottle, you must prune your vineyard like this, you must have this density of planting. We've got a fairly loose set of rules, really.
I'm not going to say Sussex PDO. It's too early. It's too early in the night for that.
Well, let's not get onto that. We've got a whole video on that if you want to watch that. But this is all about celebrating people who are at the cutting edge of a new industry. And let's not lie, we've been making good quality sort of champagne method, Great British Classic method, sparkling wines for a while now, but it is still a very young industry, and particularly in terms of feeling out what are the possibilities. And there was, if we were doing England and Wales, there was definitely would be another vineyard that we would have put in, isn't there? Because some crazy fools are growing Cabernet Franc in Wales,
but
it shouldn't work, and apparently it does. So.
It's interesting because there's in wine. I think so many of the rules are generalizations. There's so many generalizations that if it's Burgundy and it's white, it's Chardonnay.
Yep, exactly.
Unless it's Aligoté or Sauvignon Blanc. And I think what's kind of good, like, let's get wine number one in the glass.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's have a drink.
But what I think it's that balance, like rules and regulations in wine can be good, can be bad, and can be everywhere in between. Because
you want to know what it tastes like before you pick it up.
As the consumer, if you can pick up a bottle of wine and you can say it says Chianti Classico Reserva, you know that it has to be a certain amount of this grape. It has to come from a certain place. It has to have this in it. It has to be aged in this kind of wood. And it has to have at least this kind of level of alcohol. You know what you're getting.
It just means it's nice and predictable, and it's a really good thing. But we don't have that tradition to base all of this stuff on. Look at this. We've got people dialing in from Argyll and Bute. Fantastic. And from Bracknell, which is no less glamorous at all. So that's fantastic. And Sophia is only about 30 miles away from Flint Vineyard, which is just sort of near Bungay. That's not how it's pronounced. It's Bungay, isn't it, I think?
I don't know. But yes. I don't speak East Anglian.
Indeed. In Stiffkey. So you're on the Norfolk side of that boundary. Yeah, that's Oh, it's East Anglia, as we've mentioned many times, is a brilliant place to be making and growing wine. But yeah, we're kicking off down in Kent, quite near where I grew up, Sevenoaks, Tunbridge, kind of part of the world, and
with what I think is the up and coming for global notoriety. I think the up and coming grape on the planet right now. I really do.
I don't disagree.
And it is Albarino, which is, when we say Albarino, I think, most people in the wine, we think Spain, we think Galicia, we think nice floral, sat on the coast, having a little bit of a tapas, a little bit of paella, looking at, a little seafood.
Big up the Tring Massive.
Right.
You think coastal, you think cool, fresh, particularly up in that sort of Rias Baixas region, growing on trellises. I have absolutely no idea, I'm afraid, how Balfour are growing this, but I imagine it's probably done in a very similar method to the rest of their grapes, which is generally done a bit lower to the ground, a bit higher than the frost will get it, but with a pretty big canopy so that it catches lots of the sunlight.
So I'm just retasting this. So I tasted it for the first time at the Wine GB tasting, and I turned around to Janina Doyle, who works down there, who I've known for a long time. Absolutely fantastic. She does a really good podcast, Eat, Sleep, Wine, Repeat, if you want to listen to a good wine podcast. Really, really good. And I tasted it with her, and she's like, and I'm like, I'd love to do this on the show. And there was kind of a bit of it's like, it's a cellar door kind of wine. I'm like, I've just been sat next to Ferg in the sustainability talk, and he said I should get some. So I was name dropping winemaker. So it's really, really kind of cool.
Hello, Wendover. This is London speaking.
So I'm not saying we're privileged to have this because we're out buying wine, but it's kind of cool that this isn't something that you're going to see all over the place. It's very much they've made it to be a cellar door wine that you'll get when you go down there and taste. So it's kind of exciting that we've got on it.
And this is its first vintage, I believe. Mm-hmm. So this is the first vintage. So it's probably not the first year that it's grown grapes. Generally speaking, you have to have your vines planted for 3 years before you get any. You shouldn't be teaching them to crop in those first 3 years. You've got to be telling it, right, you concentrate on building your roots, building up your structure on the trunk and everything. But yeah, it's a really pretty bottle. I love it. It's got this, everything. They have a very distinctive looking winery, which I think it's in our Startum video somewhere, but it's a really great place to go with this tasting terrace.
It is, to be fair. Two of the wineries for today are in our opening video, and there's that kind of that kind of long view overlooking the vineyards. That's where their Nanette's vineyard.
Yeah. But I like how the labels follow the shape of the building as well. They know that they've got a real kind of asset in this beautiful building.
We should let people put their tasting notes in, by the way.
Oh yeah, let's move it on to wine number one. That's a good idea.
So for those of you joining us for the first time, you can pop your tasting notes in on Slido. Either scan the QR code, or if Alex is moving on too quickly, you can go to towtc.co.uk/taste, and you can pop it in there. So. But I also think what I get very excited about Balfour, because once again I've got a lot of time for them. When we were a very little online wine tasting, nobody knew anything about this company. We called up Balfour and said, we like your wines. Can we come and talk to a winemaker and maybe do an interview? And it was the first time. It was the first winery that we'd gone to, and we thought, we're nobodies, we're nothing. We're just going to turn up and we'll get palmed off to someone. They'll walk around and go, on your way. But Ferg sat down with us, 2.5, 3 hours, just talking about this and that. And
he tasted some of my wine. We tasted through. We discussed. We geeked out over yeast. The wonderful story of both himself and his father. His father was the chief winemaker of the Balfour winery. He's now passed the baton on to his son. I think he still hangs around and makes some wine as well. But before doing Balfour, he was at Chapel Down, wasn't he? If I got that right, I believe it's Chapel Down. And so Ferg, just one of the nicest people in wine, was very proud to be the youngest head winemaker in English wine for a while, until he wasn't. So he's been well and truly passed by a couple of other whippersnappers now. And I say that he's probably about 10 years younger than me. So anyway, but I think this is a really cool wine. It's not necessarily something you'd expect that we could make, and no one else is trying it. So here we go. Let's go and stick something originally, as we say, from northwest Portugal, in that kind of where it's Alvarinho, with the H in it. It's this is really pleasant.
But you think about it, it shouldn't work, but it kind of should. You know, it's where we are in Galicia.
It's the cool part of Spain.
We're cool. You know, we are, as much as you want to say we're temperate or we're moderate. We're an island, so it's all coastal. It's all technically coastal. You're never that far away from the ocean, wherever you are. You know, more than an hour and a half, 2 hours from the ocean, wherever you are in the UK.
But you don't really need much help in cooling down in Kent. That's
exactly,
for sure. Especially if you're talking about the fields where they used to send me out doing cross country running. It was always a little bit misty and nippy around about this time of year. When, of course, I think they've brought in most of the crops now. Perhaps still hanging on for some reds if they can. And it's been a tricky year for English winemakers. It's been a tricky year for all English fruit growers. It's been cold and, dare I suggest it, mildly moist.
Yes, but I think what's important. I'm going to go off at a weird tangent here.
Go on, do it.
Vintage charts. Yeah. Don't read vintage charts. Vintage charts are a waste of bloody time, okay? In my humble opinion. Because if you say 1982 was a great year in Bordeaux, okay? That meant it was very easy for anyone to make wine, okay? Yeah. So it doesn't mean that it was great. It just means that everything was right to make good wine, so anyone could have a go, okay? You will find the best value for money in wines in what people say are bad years, because the best winemakers will still make great wine.
Yeah, well, it also separates the good sites from the bad.
Or not make any at all.
Yeah. I mean, we've had this.
Follow the winemaker, not the vintage.
Well, and also the site, because I think it's where you'll find that those, in a good year, there's not necessarily that much difference between the best of sites and the not so good sites. But in a year where it's so marginal, you will find, and there have been quite a few wineries that we've heard of vineyards in this country that have decided not to even harvest their grapes this year. It was just so wet, and they can't spray to protect it as you get closer when you pick it, because you don't want to pick with all of those kind of fungicides on it. So each thing that you spray those grapes with will have a safe time where you can't touch it. And so I think it's really interesting. So you'll take that. We've got this
Someone
year.
Couldn't agree more with me, okay? He's not even going to put it up now.
I'm not
even going to put it up.
He doesn't need any of it. Here we've got, in this country this year, we have sites which have said it's so bad that we're not even going to.
We're going to buy all our fruit from Crouch Valley. What?
Well, yeah, but
tell people
as it turns out, in Crouch Valley, which is in, guess what, a rain shadow, so it's a little bit it's noticeably drier. The whole of East Anglia is noticeably drier than certainly the places in the west, which have been all sort of rained out. They've got their Pinot Noirs up to 12.5% alcohol again.
Finn's back on the case with his food pairings. Oh. I keep threatening every time he comes up, I'm going to drag him down here to cook with us, but I've never got around to it.
He hasn't cooked that. That's pretty lazy. You know, it's just
to be fair,
cured in.
To be fair, if you've cured it in the Albarino,
there's enough acidity to do that. But absolutely, what a wonderful pickled kumquat. I'm not sure I've ever had that, but I will take your word on it.
Shall we have a little look at the tasting notes?
Yeah, let's go back to the tasting notes. People are definitely getting that citrusy side, but yeah. From no grapes harvest to 12.5% on a red Pinot Noir, I mean, that is the difference in that we're seeing in this country now. So it's really, really interesting.
So I'm going to say this is quite interesting, because we've not really talked about tasting notes and what Albarino is. These tasting notes, to me, look very similar to what I would expect a Spanish Albarino to taste like, and it does taste.
And it's got a bit of weightiness to it as well.
A lot of times, you take Sauvignon Blanc, because Sauvignon Blanc follows the terroir. Okay, it follows its place. Pinot Noir follows its place. Albarino, where I've tasted, and there's not loads of places going Albarino. I've tasted some in California. Albarino kind of tastes similar, regardless of where it's grown, which is quite interesting, because so many grapes go after the terroir. This is very much, because it's so floral and so fresh, I think it's a very grape-driven style, terroir-driven style of wine, in my
Interesting.
opinion. But Balfour
But you certainly want to keep it on that cooler side, which is why it makes sense.
But before this becomes a Balfour show and we don't talk about any of the other wines or drink anything else, I just want to say it's kind of cool. So Ferg brings everything in. He ferments everything separately, brings it back.
Oh, yeah. They've only got a 4-ton press.
But did I hear did like 140 different lots or something?
I think that sounds right, because they like to give themselves lots of ingredients to work with. So even on something like this, there's blending going on.
But they also make beer on site and they make cider on site.
Yeah, very nice cider.
And I just they make, for those who don't always partake in wine, they make a fruit cider, which is absolutely phenomenal. I was once again I was at Wine GB and they're like, do you want to taste the fruit cider? Actually, don't bother. Have a can. Have it for the train on the way home. Yeah. It's a fantastic train bit.
That's it. And I have to say, cider is one of those other things that when we were at the London Wine Fair, we spent a bit of time with a guy who was trying to get the message across that in his mind, cider is just apple wine. And I think some of the most interesting ciders that I've had done share a lot in common with winemaking, particularly where they do the champagne method to get the sparkling going on. And there's some absolutely phenomenally beautiful.
Method? What's that?
Great British Classic.
Great British Classic sparkling method.
Yeah, that's the one. So they put a bit of yeast and sugar into it. Well, assuming you've got one of these nice little brochures that we wrote, take a look inside there. This is the point where they're the tirage, and they basically kick off another fermentation, but with the top tightly on, and that's what gives it its fizz. So but that's a slightly sort of a bit of a tangent to go off on. But are people enjoying this wine? Are they? Yes. Christopher Merritt said English sparkling. Yeah, there's a little bit about Merritt in there. That's for sure.
Did he merit a mention?
Oh, very good. I see what you did there.
Right. On that note, I'm going to pour
really
wine
like
number 2.
Yeah, it's a little fresh. It's definitely from a cooler vintage. But
22,
I don't think it hurts it at all. It's one which works nicely when it is fresh.
I think in a hot vintage it would maybe become a little overripe, a little flabby, a little overblown. But
But now for something completely different.
Is this what they call all of the grapes?
So occasionally you hear the phrase an estate blend, and generally speaking it means this is a blend of fruit that has all come from our estate. We haven't bought in any grapes to do that. But this is literally everything that they grow at the Bluebell Vineyards, which is right near the Bluebell Railway down in Sussex, not too far from Plumpton. And it is... So we have Saval Blanc, which is a classic of kind of old-fashioned English sparkling wine, before people really started getting into this kind of Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier blend. Saval Blanc was the thing, and it's a much maligned grape. A lot of it's been pulled out, grubbed up, as they say.
But I think what we've got to look at with these things before we go into you take the things that get the bad rap these days. The Saval Blancs, the Solaris, the Huxelrebes, the Reichensteiners, those kind of things. Those 15, 20 years ago got planted because there was guaranteed yield.
Yeah.
You'd get some wine. We weren't, it was far too risky to plant anything else if you wanted to be commercially viable. It really wasn't. And
Albarino or Cabernet Franc.
15, 20, maybe 30 years ago, is this, it wasn't overly commercial. It was made that people were making a bit of wine for this, trying to make a little bit of money about it. But they were built that if they didn't get a vintage, they ain't getting any money. They ain't got a business anymore. So, you look at the people who pioneered growing things like Chardonnay, like Bacchus, like that. That's a massive risk at those who started planting it 20 years ago. An absolutely massive risk that you were going to be...
But you can hide a bit of that less ripe nature in a sparkling wine. So much more of the flavour comes from the secondary fermentation process. Maybe a little élevage in barrels where you're giving it something not necessarily.
So I liked how you changed your tone of voice when you used the term élevage.
As the original phrase goes in the Great British Classic method in its native French. We should move on. I think that's a really good set of taste notes. We'll move that on to wine number 2. But Crazy blend, absolutely
So
bonkers.
Chasselas,
Chasselas,
Bacchus,
I mean,
Chardonnay, a bit of Chardonnay.
bit of
Everyone
Chardonnay.
knows Chardonnay, and Merlot, just to that hint of red fruit in the back end. But what's interesting about this is we got to access some of their older stuff. So this is 2020.
Yeah.
So this gives this thought, and I think this might be this kind of a Marmitey thing. Some people are going to love this because it's got this great nuttiness, these developmental flavors, this kind of caramelly, kind of woody kind of texture.
Yeah, it's and some people touch of the red fruit that I
and some people go,
tasted it, but
it doesn't have, if you had current vintage, has it got the same freshness as you had current? Absolutely not. But once again, this is where people go, how long should I age a wine for?
Yeah.
It depends what you like.
Very different on styles of wine as well. A red, big heavy red, very different to, a lighter white or this, which is its own thing. Now, let's get into the story. The winemaker at Bluebell is a chap called Kevin, and he used to be the winemaker at Plumpton. His partner, Smidge, Sarah Midgley, I believe she was then probably the most recent to one winemaker at Plumpton, and obviously there've been various other teachers in between, but Kevin was that main sort of wine teacher when a lot of the people who have graduated and gone on really did start getting into the English wine scene. So he was teaching the winemakers of England, so he knows what he's doing. So why did one of the most knowledgeable winemakers in England, who got lots of experience in all around the world, why did he go and plant Merlot and Chasselas? Because the bloke who owns the vineyard told him to. And it was sort of, it was it was very much I liked Chasselas when I went to Switzerland, so I'd like some of that, and I really like Merlot, so let's have some of that as well. And they were like, are you sure? But do you know what? You can make it work. But what on earth would you pair with this? It's
different.
Obviously. It's really different. But like the Merlot when we did it on its own, just the red Merlot, it is its own thing, and it's got a lot of character to it. It's a fun wine.
It is. It's got this nuttiness about it. It's almost like, the thing is, I want to say it's got the notes of sherry, and not that oxidative notes of sherry, but that kind of sherry, nutty frangipane.
It's brought together nicely. It's not oxidized. It's not gone. It's just that's all sort of helped it get more complex and more interesting. So yeah.
And the texture's really cool. It's very textural.
Yeah.
And what's not? It's weird. Every time you go back, it tastes different.
It's different, isn't it? Yeah.
It's like you go back and you just look at the tasting notes. There's everything from citrus to blueberry to vanilla to apple to honey to banana to strawberry. So when we look at our tasting clusters for WSET, okay,
yeah,
so we got citrus. Does it hit citrus?
Yep.
Okay. Does it hit
orchard
fruits? Yes. Does it hit stone fruits? Yes, it's got some peachiness in. Does it hit tropical? Yes, it does. Oh, now we've got to go to our red things. Does it hit dark fruit? Dark fruit? Does it hit black fruits? Red fruits? Yes. Now we go to secondary. Does it hit vanilla? Yes, it does. Does it hit leaves? Yes, it does. It's got everything.
If you were to go to a marketing department at, let's say, Casella Family Wines, who make Yellowtail, and they're going to say, we've had this idea, guys, why don't we stick all of these grapes together into one wine? You'd be shot down, because the commercial instinct is this is not a very easy to sell wine. But it's fun, and again, this is the kind of wine that they sell a lot of at their tasting room.
To be fair, I don't like Chardonnay, and I ain't drinking any effing Merlot, so I'm done, aren't I? So when we take the wine people of the world, it's not built for that. So
no, but it doesn't have any Rondo in it, so there is that.
Or Phoenix,
yeah. Look, the fun thing is that even with these grapes, you can do some really cool things. One of my favourite crazy out there wines, again, can't go into this tasting, otherwise also it's the style of wine wouldn't work. But there is a winery in Wales, and I've forgotten its name, I will see if I can dig it out, who have made they have started harvesting their grapes high up in the hills, which is a bad thing, because the higher you go, the colder it gets, and Wales is not renowned for being desperately warm. And they've done it on the wrong facing slope, and when they planted their vines, where they planted 100% Rondo, which is, again, this grape which tends to divide people.
What,
Their
either
sheep
they hate
came
it
out
or
to-
they really hate
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Sorry to all the Rondo lovers out there.
People,
It's just not my thing.
the sheep came out of the neighbouring field and ate the vines down to like a couple of buds above the ground, and they thought that they were going to have to replant it.
All the sheep died.
All the sheep died from eating Rondo. Ah, very good. But they somehow managed to get this all back together, and then they decided to make this strange method of wine called a col fondo, but they called it col rondo. Do you see what they did there? And again, apparently it's really good and really
That's genius.
fun.
I think
natural
I heard.
wine.
Was it?
Yeah, it was on one of the podcasts.
Lee talked about on his
Yeah.
podcast about how it was his biggest surprise of the Welsh wine show.
This shouldn't
Absolutely.
work. There's nothing about this that works.
So I'm really interested. I'm really interested to chat because I'm sure a lot of people have been to a lot of English wineries.
Yeah, and some people have been harvesting at vineyards.
Yeah,
so what was that? Sorry, All Angels, was that?
Yeah, I saw All Angels down
All
there.
Angels.
But where have you been? What's been cool? And what has kind of been almost like shock that you're like, I've tried this, and it's like, cool. I was expecting, we talked a couple of months ago after we'd been to California about having carbonic macerated chilled Zinfandels that I looked at. I'm like, this is going to be natural wine. It's going to be awful. And then I was like massively surprised.
That's really nice.
But I think finding those wines is what makes wine interesting. We can go Italian Pinot Grigio. It tastes like Italian Pinot Grigio. English Chardonnay tastes like English Chardonnay. It's these kind of wines that make it fun and cool and a little bit different.
Definitely. And I think also you've got to just remember English wine is quite an expensive thing by the very nature of the fact that the land is expensive, the labour to harvest them and to look after them is expensive, even the diesel to run your tractor is expensive. So doing things like this, which can allow you to make a better priced English wine, I think is a really, really fun thing to do. But this is interesting. So
is it time to move on to wine number 3?
The white Pinot at Osbrick. So funny you should mention that. But they've done a white Pinot Meunier and a white Pinot Noir. But we decided to do the Pinot Noir, an English sparkling red. Who makes that? I've never tried an English sparkling red. Oh no, hang on. Did Bolney make one? I think Bolney did do one. I don't know if I've tried it or not.
I don't think I've ever had an English sparkling red.
Yeah, because we've done the Australian one.
But sparkling reds are making a little bit of a comeback now. We're starting to see, the Aussie ones. Lambrusco is making massive.
Cuvée Noir, the Bolney, the sparkling red wine. Yeah, I saw it at their tasting
You would have
room,
thought,
but I did not. Yeah, interesting. So you were saying it's starting to make a bit of a comeback because it's just a funny old kind of concept, but can be really fun.
But you take something like Lambrusco in the 80s, it was massive. You couldn't get enough of it, and then it kind of fell out of favour.
So All Angels did one as well. Of just 300. Okay, I can be forgiven for having missed that one. Then that's okay. But Norfolk, a red sparkling as well. Magda, was that could that have been Winbury? Don't know.
Maybe.
Interesting. There's a few producers just around that, but vermouth, red and white, Albury. Yes, I have heard they've done some really cool things with that. But yeah, I love this kind of creative side of things, and it does genuinely shock you more than it should. I think for me, one of the most interesting ones was at the Independent English Wine Awards run by the other Alex Taylor. Was getting to finally try the Saval Blanc from...
This is what was the Ashdown.
That is the Ashdown, yeah. Chet and Waveney Valley. Oh, John Hemmant. Yeah, I met him on one of my Plumpton courses. Yeah, really, really cool little husband and wife's team.
Burn Valley. I like Burn Valley stuff. What did we do from there? We did their red blend, didn't we?
Possibly, yeah.
We did. Counting back 4 years, I just realised that last month was our 4-year anniversary.
Our fourth anniversary. Yeah. Well, actually, the tasting was in October, wasn't it? We launched in September, and then we did the tasting in October. For those of you who've been with us since the beginning, a huge thanks for putting up with us all through that time. You wouldn't believe how far things have come from that very first time.
For those who've been, I'm going to show them what I found downstairs, and if anyone wants one, let us know, and we'll send them one.
Okay,
I'm lovely.
So we had. When we launched our very first wine tasting, we'd spent months and months developing the packaging. And we'd tried one generation machine, and we'd thrown it away and had to get another one. And that had finally turned up about a week late. And on the day where we were supposed to be producing these things and shipping them, and it was broken. So we had to do it all by hand, pouring wine into little measuring cylinders and passing it down a line.
Get wine number 3
Yeah,
in the
let's
glass.
get wine number 3 in the glass. So 4 years of doing this, we have now shipped out 1 million samples of wine, and thankfully not all of those have been made by hand, but all of our own ones, we're still packing these up by hand, and it's been an amazing adventure over the last few years. But yeah, today we shipped out a few things.
Few things.
Advent
calendars are on the way. But anyway, when we first started, we had these, and we don't have Badger Cam anymore. But it's a little wine journal that you can basically, like the little sheets that you have.
Yeah.
It's the sheets, but it's blank in a book.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd done a load, and when we moved from our previous place,
we lost them.
They'd ended up on a pallet, but we found a couple of hundred, so they're very limited edition. So
well, we're thinking of putting them in with some of our orders over Christmas, because it's also got this lovely little wine glossary at the back, which explains every random phrase that we could think of, and all through these things. Like whenever you hear a term, like what exactly is cold stabilization? Well, this will tell you what are
standing
esters,
like this in
and
the
it's
igloo.
not just the ex-wife of my friend who's a little bit crazy, but let's not go there. What is isinglass, and why does that make a wine not vegan? All of these kind of things right in the back of this. So yeah, keep your eyes out. If you order some wine,
we might chuck one in.
Leading up to Christmas, we might well chuck one of those in. So,
but anyway, we're digressing, and we need to move the tasting notes on.
Surely not
digressing. Right,
apple, melon, vanilla, pear drops. Rich,
all the flavours,
so many things. That's really cool. So now we are on to the white Pinot Noir from our wonderful friends America and Nick Brewer at Oastbrook.
Was there someone?
Yeah. Sophia's been to stay at.
I was about to say someone. I think said they were going down. Did you stay in the Hobbit house, or in the tree house, or on the lake, or in a yurt, or of all the things that you can do?
Sorry, my nose is going crazy.
I think it's such a cool, and I think wine tourism is what is going to help the English wine business survive.
I think some of the most interesting conversations I've had with these guys who run this, I mean, other than the whole arguments over there, yes, they have a Hobbit house, but for legal reasons, they are not allowed to call it the Hobbit house.
I can.
You can, yeah. So it was called the Hobbit House, and then the estate of got in touch and said, "Oh no, you don't. You're going to be shutting that down and never calling it that ever again." So they renamed it to, and I think it was called the Halfling House. And yes, their lovely dog as well. They're just such a lovely couple. So they called it the Halfling House, and they checked that was all fine. So what did the Tolkien estate do? They went out and trademarked the phrase halfling house, specifically relating to holiday rental properties, and went back and then sued them again and told them they had to change the name again. And so this time they did all the renaming in secret and had to trademark it themselves to stop the Tolkien estate from doing the same trick again. So it's now called something else.
But look at that. It looks like a Hobbit house.
It's a Hobbit house with a big round door and a hot tub. And they do their beads, and they do their cricket bats, and they do their things. Many things.
Brazilian carnival nights.
Opera in the vineyard. But yeah, another interesting conversation we've had with them is about scale.
They make great wine.
It's great wine, and it's really thoughtfully made wine. And it expresses their individual personalities quite nicely. And Nick went to school with me at Tunbridge, and we were only a couple of years apart. We didn't know each other well at the time. And America's from Brazil, and she's called America. She was born on the 4th of July. And she makes these big, expressive kind of bang with fruit kind of things. And then Nick's playing around with some crazy techniques in the winery, doing stuff like there is generally speaking, we're all under the impression that oxygen is the enemy of wine. That's the impression everyone has. So what do they do with their fruit juice? Well, one of the things he loves to do is to hit the fruit juice with an absolute load of oxygen and blast it through to oxidize any of the kind of those kind of more fragile flavors in that, which sounds ridiculous. But then he does manipulations and selecting really cool, interesting yeast to develop more flavors, and it's just really surprising. And I think that's one of the techniques he does with this.
I think like what's cool when we were down there, and there's nothing I like more than being put on the spot for a blind tasting. Nothing I like more than that ever.
Oh yeah.
And we're sat outside, and Nick disappears. He comes back a couple of minutes later with this kind of like crushed up Evian bottle, and pours this wine for us. Go,
yeah.
What is it?
What's this? Yeah.
And that was, I think, his first attempt at the white Pinot Noir.
No, it's the Pinot Blanc. It was because what he'd done was, he did, because we thought that it had red fruit flavours. And we're like, well, that's got to be a Blanc de Noir like this, a white wine from red grapes.
Tasting,
but it was actually a Pinot Blanc, which normally doesn't taste huge amounts of anything.
Was that the vintage that he'd made a Pinot Blanc and America had made a Pinot Blanc separately and done two different labels and didn't tell anyone whose was whose and just asked people who preferred what? I think.
So they're really creative. They're really cool. And what they are navigating is that boundary between making too little wine that you're not commercially successful enough to even bother doing it, and making too much wine where you have to start focusing on reducing costs and scaling things up and competing.
And it's right. So everything has to be commercial, but it's how commercial do you want to get?
Yeah.
And
but so this is cool. So we've got red apples, red fruit, red berries in this zingy, sherbety, pear droppy, and orchard fruit white wine. What on earth? I mean, this is. I know they're not the only people in the world to be making a Blanc de Noir, but this is a really, really exciting.
By the way, that is the new name for it: the Not Hobbit House. Calm down. It was amusing. It wasn't that funny. But yeah, I just and I think that part of the world is great. You can go down. You've got Buddingham Castle literally in their back garden.
Yep.
Because it's weird, because I think I'd been there. I'd gone down with my family to Hastings the week before, and we'd stopped off there.
Right, yeah.
And family holidays are less about going to wineries, unfortunately. So I'd really not got my bearings as to kind of how close I was. And we went down the next week, and we stopped off, and obviously we needed some light refreshments on our way through. And it's like, I was in this pub last week, Alex, with my family. Like, of all the places in all the world, it's like 5 days later, I'm like, I should have just stayed down there.
Great people, really cool wine, all very handmade. They have got an immensely beautiful winery building, complete with this kind of event space upstairs. All sort of beautiful carved wood, long tables. You can sort of rent it out for your weddings and everything.
Online Wine Tasting Club Live.
Oh, stop! We keep teasing that. And just they are very content to sit where they are. They aren't trying to scale up. They aren't trying to go off and win a listing in the co-op doing English wine. They just want to do what they do and have a cool wine club. And they've got a wine club, so you can get involved and get a delivery through every quarter of some beautiful sparkling wines and some of these really awesome still wines. They do Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc,
sparkling rosé.
Yeah, that's if you want America's personality, that's it in a bottle. So, And obviously you can stay there. But I just really like it. I'm personally a member of their wine club, and it's I always look forward to the deliveries popping through. So
and it's nice, and and I'm not saying what we say goes, but the fact if you hear that we're members of wine clubs.
Yeah,
it means that it probably because we're
putting our money where their mouth is.
Because usually when we want to drink things, we bring it in wholesale and go, that walks out the door. So if we're actually paying full ticket for something, it shows that the wine's good. B, we want to support it, and that's a really good way to
I
do
was
stuff.
I was a member of the
And
Flint's,
that's what I'd say.
club.
If you like these wines, and I don't want to put us out of business, if you like these wines and you want a bottle or two, mix and match, get it from us. But if you want to buy a case of it, if you want to buy 2 cases of it, just go direct to the vineyard.
And if you want to try some other parts of their range, and I think that was the other
Tell
thing
them we
that
sent
I
you, though.
love with both with them and with Flint is particularly with Flint is where the wine club is the reserved space for where you get these special limited release, like you said, only 300 bottles of this made, and it's quite interesting. That's quite a good follow on because the next wine number 4,
is Flint.
Started off as a wine club only exclusive, and you know, Flint have been making Bacchus. I'll move the tasting notes on again. Flint's been making Bacchus since they very started, and Ben Witchell, who's the winemaker there, his master's project.
So we're going to put wine
number 4
in the glass, which is what Alex is now talking about.
His master's project was on Bacchus, and he did a whole bunch of research into what are the yeast strains that work particularly well, what are the temperatures of fermenting it that work particularly well, what do you need to do in the vineyard to get it really good, and he really sort of changed the kind of the standard makeup of what a Bacchus looks like. And he was so meticulous about it. He would create, I think it was typically he would have 8 different base wines from different parts of the vineyard, from different treatments, from different clones of the grape. And that wasn't something that anyone did with Bacchus. It was just a kind of, oh, well, that's just that'll grow, so we'll just plant it and harvest it. And it wasn't a variety that was given much respect until Ben really started looking into it. But their main Bacchus was a stainless steel one. And I think that was really interesting. It was always a very kind of expressive sort of the vintage that you had. And I think it was one of the most delicious Bacchuses that was out there. But then on the wine club, you suddenly got this one where he goes, well, this is a grape that everyone tells you should just stick in stainless steel and try to keep it as fresh as possible. This is not the kind of wine people associate it with Sauvignon Blanc and with Riesling, which are not grapes that you put in barrels.
What I'm going to give you here, okay? So when you generally pick up a wine bottle and you read the back label, it says red fruit pairs with fish, badger on a bicycle, yeah, something like that.
This is an expression of our value of integrity and sustainability.
This from Flint Vineyards is a rounded style of Bacchus presenting what we feel to be the best expression of the variety, harvested from our own vines and a parcel from Martin's Lane Vineyard in Crouch Valley, Essex. Mm-hmm. To express the complexity of the Bacchus grape, we use a multitude of techniques that respect both the traditional and more novel methods of winemaking. 40% fermentation and aging in third fill oak barrels lends texture. Hyperoxidation of some juice fractions softens the wine.
That's what Nick was doing at
and the use of nitrogen at the press preserves aromatics. Ripe, fleshy pear and English apple on the nose, with hints of violets and Turkish delight. The palate is soft, textured, but also fresh and crisp. A generous length of pink grapefruit, almonds and biscuity pastry rounds off this complex wine. And I think there's only that much detail because that's all that fits on the label. That's all that fits.
So he would,
if he had a Magnum...
Yeah. If you're in the wine club, you get this long A4 printout with every single wine that will go into every detail. But they're doing batonnage, stir it all around on some of it. Then they're doing stainless steel on other parts of it. And it's that wonderful, like you say, this they're so organized, and he's got a vision of what he wants to make, and he knows how to make it. And his vision now of what Bacchus should be, I think they've stopped making their standard Bacchus. This is now their Bacchus, and it sits kind of halfway between. But this was John Mobb's Great British Wines, number 1 Bacchus in the whole of the UK, and I'm going to drink it now because
which is interesting for a wine that's basically a baby of Riesling.
Well, yeah, indeed. A lot of people think it tastes a lot like Sauvignon Blanc. And it does. The similarities.
It has that. I think that gets used. I think that gets over pushed. Once again, I put everything in my humble opinion when I'm not actually that humble. I think it was kind of Sauvignon Blanc was going through this mental Marlborough craze, wasn't it? It was Sancerre, it was Mull, everyone's like that, and Bacchus was England Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
And I think that got over pushed a little bit rather than let Bacchus stand on its own 2 feet. But if you need a gateway phrase to get somebody into it, I can understand people would say it's England Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
But
it's a nice, easy thing to market.
But what I've said about English wine going on and on and on is we always used to have this crux on it and go, this is pretty good for an English wine. This is good value for an English wine. It just needs to be really good or really good value. And for an English wine, shouldn't be a get out of jail free card. No. And it used to be for the longest time. It's like, yeah, but it's local. Yeah, but it's awful. You know,
and that was the case
you wouldn't get away with that with anything else. You know, if someone goes, here's a potato I grew in my field and it was rotten, you wouldn't go, oh, but it's a local potato. I don't care. It's awful.
So it's not as oaky and toasty as their older Bacchus Fumet. This is now definitely that blend between the two styles. But very interesting. He gives a tasting note of Turkish delight, that kind of rose petally thing.
Mm.
And I think where Finn, you're saying that it's moving into that muscat floral. The kind of aromatics that you get from this. Sorry for going a bit geeky, but Sauvignon Blanc has this group chemical called thiols, which are they come from sort of precursors within the grapes, and then they pop out during the ferment. But this does not have thiols in it. It's not got that same group of chemicals. It has similar kind of smells and flavors, but it's coming from something called esters instead, which is a very different group of compounds. But that's very much coming from the yeast itself. So that's where his kind of meticulous research into which yeast varieties work well with this have created that thing. And now look at this. Blackcurrant and elderflower. That is fascinating, isn't it? And you do get a blackcurrant note on some Sauvignons, don't you, as well?
Yeah, that very blackcurrant leaf kind of thing is put in a lot of Sauvignons. But the Muscat point, I think, is absolutely spot on. And once again, me and my tasting notes. When I was in Alsace, how many weeks ago it was, I was at Mure, and we were up and they were harvesting, and they picked some Muscat grapes off the vines and go, taste it. And I just turned around. I'm there with all these other influencers and all these other people who know they go, yeah, it's, that's
really muscatty.
Really muscatty. I'm like, well done, Jamie. Big tick on your tasting notes there. The Muscat grape tastes
of
muscatty. Yeah. Well, you're a winner here. Well, but I do get that. It's got this massive floral punch, Muscat, kind of what you get in Gewürztraminer. It has this almost, Alsatian-y kind of feel because it's got that weightiness.
Weight. Yeah, it has that waxy, weighty feel to it. It's only 11% alcohol, so some of that's coming from. You can drink more, and also the tax won't be as much if the government's going to.
No, we're not going there.
We'll not go there. Lobby your MPs. Don't do this crazy increase in duty again. We're already paying far too much in tax for wine. But yeah, it's one of the most fascinating expressions of Bacchus that I could imagine. It's certainly so much more interesting than a lot of them.
But it's also interesting that it's from different, brought in from different parts of the country. That it's blended from different places that allow you to get the wine that you're looking for.
They've got Bacchus growing on these steep east-facing slopes, which again, it's like they tend to reserve their south-facing ones for things like the Pinot Noir and particularly Pinot Noir Precoce.
Things that really
need to ripen, and then they found that the Bacchus expresses itself best in a slightly cooler year.
On their slopes of all the massive slopes there are in Norfolk.
They're
ramp.
It's not the hilliest spot, and it's not Alsace, and it's not Moselle, but it's not as flat as you might expect from the Norfolk Fens.
Can you pull this point up here? Yeah. Because I think this is hugely what Joe's put here is hugely important about any kind of wine, because we make blanket statements and we go, we've tried one of them. Someone's handed me a Chardonnay, and I go, don't like that, so I don't like Chardonnay. Someone's handed me a Bacchus, don't like that, or I do like that, so I love Bacchus. They're not all created equal. And what's really nice to see is people are putting their own winemaking style on it. And I'm still, I don't want to be the geek because we're never all going to be that geeky. But I say follow the winemaker. You're going to like someone.
Ben has a style. Ben definitely.
You're going to like a style.
And there's this little hint of vanilla that always runs through. And so let's break apart one of the things he says there. He says that however much of it was in third fill oak barrels. That means, and so he buys second-hand oak barrels that have been used twice in places like Burgundy. He buys quite a lot of Burgundy barrels. So he'll buy a Burgundy barrel that's been used for making Chardonnay in, I don't know, Chablis or Meursault or somewhere like that, and they then come in their third year, and he whooshes it through with steam to make it all nice and sterile, and refurbishes it, and in goes this Bacchus. It's not what many other people in the country are doing, but like Sophia says, and by the way, thank you. It is rolling hills, definitely. But he's called it Fumé. He wants to kind of create its own sort of identity, just like with his Silex, which is his kind of signature sort of blend on the white side as well.
But that is also with Fumé. Fumé is obviously, originally
links you through to
Fumé Blanc, which was Sauvignon Blanc from Mondavi in the 70s.
True.
So if we're going to say it's got that Sauvignon-esque kind of thing, that's almost.
It's not a horrible Fumé, thing to try to link it to, is it? So yeah.
No, it is. But I think back to the point is. Everything's got a style, Some people go, oh, I don't like X type of food. Well, it depends what's been done with it. I don't like X genre of movie, but there's some comedy you might like and some comedy you don't. So I'm going to compare wine to Jimmy Carr here, aren't I? It's
Ricky Gervais.
But I think that's the thing. It's and the joy of what we do is you can open it and go. You can say, I absolutely love this, and I want to buy 100 cases of it, or. And I hope no one says I absolutely hate because I think it's a cool one. But some people might go, I absolutely hate this.
No.
And I never want to see it again. And there's not a right or wrong answer.
It's just what you like, what your preferences are. But I think that is a very drinkable on its own wine. What would I mean, traditionally, if I'm thinking of Bacchus and it's got that really kind of green note to it, I tend to go for things like asparagus. I don't think I would go with this.
I want this with tacos. Fish tacos. Fish tacos.
The classic what grows together goes together.
Yes.
Fish tacos from... Yes.
I want crispy fish tacos with this.
Okay. Well, any other suggestions for pairings with this wine?
Why are you not agreeing? I will say anything else, but... It's not
the first thing that comes to mind, but I do love a good fish taco.
I think it is. I've got guacamole in my pairing notes.
Nice. Fair enough. Okay. But really cool. I love that wine. And yeah, +1 for whoever wrote Dionysian. That's excellent. We should have some reds because reds are difficult to do in England. Oh, I tell you what. Also, perhaps before we move on to the reds, let's very, very quickly go through this English sparkling because we do want to, through sparkling method techniques. Because I think what's lovely about England isn't just that we do the great British classic method. That's definitely
take wine, make it bubbly. The end, drink more wine.
But the fact is that we've got things like we've got our champagne or Great British Classic method ones like the Rathvinny, like Night Timber, like Ridgeview, some absolutely beautiful ones. If you want an alternative, you might not have got Squerries down in Kent near Westerham. That is on this beautiful chalky soil. Absolutely magnificent stuff.
The problem with English wine at the moment is every time we give this list, someone pops up another vineyard I've been to. I'm like, I have no idea.
Or you could go down to old Everflight, which is I saw when it had first been planted. The work they had to do to that, it's near Ditchling, and it's right at the bottom of the valley and sort of in the shadow of the South Downs. So you might think it's got chalk, but it was absolutely clay ridden, and they spent God knows how much money on trying to drain the soils at Everflight. But they've got old Luke Spalding, who is an absolute legend at trying to do a lot of the regenerative viticulture there. So they're doing some really cool stuff. I haven't actually tasted the wines yet, but I hear from good people that
they were at London Wine Fair.
They were. There was such a queue that we didn't get to them. So that is the champagne method, where you add in your yeast and your sugar and you ferment it in the bottle. You riddle it to get the gunk down to the bottom of the neck. You stick it into a neck freezer, which looks like a kind of it's a big circular thing with lots of holes for your bottles to go in, and it just submerges the top kind of couple of inches.
It's like a bain marie with holes in it.
Exactly.
It's like a massive colander.
Sits in there for a few minutes, and that freezes just that tiny little plug at the top. And then when you turn it that way up, you've got the gas between the wine and the plug of gunk. So the idea being that when you pop your cork off, the gas just pushes that little bit of ice containing all the horrible bits out, leaving it beautifully shiny and clean and nice. And then traditionally you would stick your thumb over the top of it and try to catch it before the wine then sprays out everywhere. Nowadays, there are machines that you can put the whole bottle into, and it does it all automatically. And that's probably quite a good investment if you value your fingers.
Have you ever done it underwater?
I have not, no.
So there's Argyle out of Oregon and Movia out of, if I'm wrong here, it's either Slovenia or Slovakia. I think it's Slovenia.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done dinners with them, and they do late disgorge, and they have an ice bucket, like an ice bucket, and just disgorge it underwater.
Wow.
Because there's enough pressure that pops a bit out.
But it moves a bit slower.
But then the pressure the water's there that doesn't allow the wine to come out.
Nice.
And then you just bring it back up. It's kind of cool.
Like that.
But anyway, we're digressing.
We are, but also this is our WSET going through different methods of making sparkling wine. The Charmat method is the Prosecco method, where that same sugar and yeast gets added, but not into individual bottles, because that's a load of faff.
In a big can.
Big tank. And if somebody puts in a load of yeast nutrients at the same time, the tank explodes and Prosecco goes everywhere.
There are great YouTube videos of Prosecco.
Google exploding Prosecco tank for some fun, happy times. Flint, and it's important not to generalize, because we think of those wines as simpler than champagne method wines. It's not fair to say that. And what Flint do with their Charmat method, and I think they were either first or second, depending on who you ask, to make one, they then use a lot of advanced winemaking techniques on the base wines that go into that then becomes fizzy. So they will stir and mix and make loads of cool things on the individual wines. So you've got some of that toasty, bready, brioche character going into it.
I think the main difference is when you talk about value and price and quality. A lot of people think about it being price and quality because it's
cheaper to make.
It's more expensive to do, and it's more labour intensive to do traditional method. But any wine is only as good as what you start with.
Yep.
So, but if you're going to use a cheaper method, a lot of people are doing that for things like Prosecco because they want it cheap and cheerful and go from there.
On the note of other cheaper methods, there's this ancestral method, or pétillant naturel, which is very popular in the kind of natural wine scene. You quite often get these cloudy wines. You don't, not necessarily, which haven't been disgorged. You've still got all of the kind of gunk from the fermentation in it, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. If it hasn't been disgorged, it is immensely hard to open those pétnats because they gush everywhere. It's really hard to do, so you lose a lot of your wine. But the Davenport Pétnat, that was a really, really nice one at the Natural Wine Fair. And Fizzy Bum Bum, the best named wine in the whole of the UK. Fizzy Bum Bum from our good friends Mike Boyne, whose Howland Grappa winery took over from us as the smallest licensed winery in England, and then actually made some wine, so you can have that one. But yeah, it's a really fun wine. It's peachy, it's exciting. It's made of Solaris that was grown in his back garden. So that's the scale. We've got the multinational ones now exporting around the world.
I'm going to pour one five.
Let's have some red
and move the tasting notes on so people can taste while they listen to you talk about bubbles.
Okay, let's do that. And then the very last one that's worth mentioning, obviously, is carbonation, which is a giant soda stream.
Make it bubbly.
So that Pétnat is also ready quicker, and so is Charmat method.
I think
you don't have to hold stock for years and years. Like there's 9 months minimum for an English sparkling wine, quality English sparkling wine. Sorry,
but that's down to rules and regulations, not how long it takes it to happen.
But it does take, it's a slow process, that fermentation, when you're doing it in the smaller space. Carbonation, obviously, is the quickest and easiest one to do. And so
just get really
chattel down, carbonate their Bacchus, and it makes a lightly fizzy, pleasant, sparkling Bacchus. does it taste like a champagne? No, of course it doesn't. It tastes like a lightly sparkling Bacchus. And that's fine.
So if you asked a winemaker,
yep,
which method is best, what would their answer be?
Well, probably the most expensive one,
depends.
or it depends.
It depends. And so much of it is, what are you looking for at the end? Are you looking for, because if you're doing...
You do get some pretty big opinions.
If you're doing traditional methods, you're obviously going to have to... Someone's got to pay for that at the end. So it's...
Yeah, there's been a whole debate about whether the existence of the cheaper methods in the English wine scene debases the whole of English wine and stops it being premium, and should England just be traditional champagne? Sorry,
yes, because Italy only makes Barolo.
That is indeed my
humble opinion.
An argument. I wasn't saying it was my argument, but the other thing just mentioned very briefly with that traditional method, we didn't talk about dosage, and dosage is this really the last point where you can really tweak the end product, and it's fun. It's basically you're putting in a little bit of sweetness that helps bring the fruity flavors out, and it's astonishing. Your part of the job is just stylistically what do you want it to do, and another part of it is balancing the wine, because if you have got a really, really acidic wine that strips your teeth off, a little bit of sweetness can bring some balance to that, and it's a really nice thing to do. So you will line up glasses of your wine. You'll literally be measuring out drops of this liqueur de what's it called? Liqueur de expedition. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, my
tirage is earlier in the process.
Liqueur d'expedition, which and you're just testing it out, saying what do we like, and generally speaking, you find it kind of expresses itself to you. And people who chase the numbers are doing it wrong. You can't judge a wine by how much sugar it is in that. You can't say, I only like wines with 3 grams a litre of sugar, because then something comes along that's got 40 grams a litre and it's brilliant.
I think people who make sparkling wine, especially when they do a blended sparkling wine, are absolute geniuses. I've got 15, 20 years ago now, I was a champagne base wine tasting, and it was so fairly early in my career. And so white Pinot Noir, white Pinot Meunier, Chardonnay. Here's the 3 wines that are going to make these are going to make Dom Perignon. And you taste it, and it's like, my eyes are like about to fall out. It's just so much. It's like paint thinner, because it is so acidic. Yeah. And I'm like, how can people taste those things and know that plus that plus that, doing that in 3 years' time is going to be something?
It is a mystery to me. So yes, a real skill making sparkling wine. Anyway, could we ever do a sparkling wine tasting?
We could do it as an add-on. We could do it if we decided we could do something in person. You know, if we had a load of people wanting to do a sparkling wine tasting, we had enough people that wanted to buy the bottles, and we could.
It's just when you open it, we might have to do it as like 3 bottles, because opening 6 bottles is an expensive. Maybe we have to bundle it with the Coravin sparkling wine preserver thing, because those things are very clever, because they re-inject carbon dioxide into the top. I've seen sparkling bottlenecks cleaved with sabers. Yes, this is a fun thing. You're an expert at this. I've never done it, but I heavily refreshed people. I love it. Anyway, on to the red. So we're still at Flint.
We're still at Flint. And
now,
we've got
a precocious wine.
Pinot Noir, no?
If you drink it loud enough, you'll truly sound precocious. As Mary Poppins didn't quite sing.
No.
I think this was one of my first English reds that I didn't hate.
Oh, before you do it, would you like me to tell everybody about this wine?
Let's hear about the winemaking on this.
This early ripening clone of Pinot Noir was hand harvested in September from our own small parcel in Martyrs Lane Vineyard, 50% semi-carbonic maceration, using a fruit-forward yeast strain for its lifted fruit aromas, 50% crushed fruit using a classic Burgundian yeast for black cherry fruits and spice, twice daily pump overs, 6 months in third fill barrels, 100% malolactic fermentation, no fining and minimal filtration softens the wine and lends texture. Black Forest Gâteau aromas, cherries and delicate spice on the nose, bright and fruity on the palate with integrated tannins and silky smooth finish. This wine has not been cold stabilized, so might throw a small crystalline deposit. This is harmless and demonstrates minimal handling. What I have
It's
to
also
put to this,
a tiny bit cloudy as well, which again goes with that unfined, unfiltered thing. But it's a very light. I mean, Pinot Noirs are light anyway, but in a cold year in England, it certainly is going to be light. And he just accepts that. You can't overwork the grapes to try to get more colour out the skin without just creating something that's just horrible,
tannic
frankly.
and undrinkable because it's been overforced.
Yeah.
You can't, over-extracted Pinot Noir is not a pleasant thing.
I think this leans into, so Ben spent a bit of time in, dare I say it, Beaujolais, and that's where he got some of his techniques. So semi-carbonic maceration. So carbonic maceration is a different way of fermenting the grapes. It's not using yeast. It's kind of an enzymatic breakdown of the juice inside the grapes, and so it's doing crazy different flavors. It tends to give you bubblegummy flavors, cherry flavors, a little bit of banana, kirsch. It's that kind of slightly confected fruit flavor. I think when it's done on a thing like a Beaujolais Nouveau, 100%, and it relies on you keeping a whole bunch of carbon dioxide above the thing. That's why they call it carbonic maceration.
I like that.
But
stained glass red.
I
put it up to the studio lights. It's quite a beautiful colour.
It's a very cool colour, and this leans in on what should an English red wine be. It's got to be on that more elegant side. And yeah, this is 12% alcohol, which is absolutely where you'd want it to be for that.
Finn, it's far too late in the day for things like this. Far too late in the day.
You've got that umami side to it, which will work beautifully with the
like porcini mushroom, yeah.
It's definitely in that kind of Northern Italian, Burgundian / Beaujolais space. I think his level of skill with getting the balance right on this is phenomenal. I think making a good red in England is very hard, especially
even at the best of times.
Even at the best of times. In 2023 wasn't a spectacular year, but again, he did it in Martin's Lane Vineyard in the Crouch Valley in Essex, which is the place where you want to be.
A bit of a helping hand. But this is once again proof. I go back to follow the winemaker, don't follow the vintage.
The chocolate character that comes through
because I would
from the oak.
I would hazard the bet that if the grapes weren't any good, he wouldn't have made it.
Yeah, he wouldn't. He wouldn't have done it. He's not made reds in several vintages. This is a great wine.
It's almost like Lambrusco light.
Yeah,
it's got that slightly vinegary,
that balsamic kind of note that's coming through to it. It's not vinegary as in like a faulty VA or anything. It's just it has that line that goes through it of those wonderful notes. Yeah. And yeah, I like I say, I think the cherry can be over the top artificial when you start going 100%, but doing it this 50% where you've crushed a little bit of the grapes, so there is a bit of normal fermentation going on, but a lot of them are whole bunch in there. In the fermentation is happening within the skin of the grape. Nothing from outside the grape has really touched it to do that. So there's some very clever winemaking going on. I think this would just, for me, other than a nice porcini mushroom risotto, I think.
So the question,
it's like a cassoulet would work really nicely.
So the question, I'm going back to this one. Is this something you're drinking at your classic-y room temperature red, or is this something is this your summery, sunshiny red that you have a little bit chilled, or?
I think it works really nicely, a little bit chilled for sure.
To be fair, this came out of the fridge 15 minutes before the tasting, so it's been out for an hour-ish.
Yeah,
it's not too hot in here, so.
But as a demonstration of what you can do in this country to make something which isn't just trying to be
a red for the sake of a red.
For the sake of a red.
I think
there's a vision behind that wine.
There's a lot of wineries in the UK that are style chasing. They're like, I want my wine to taste like my Chardonnay to taste like Chablis. I want to taste like Volnay or whatever you want to pick. And it's, while we're doing that, you're not standing on your own 2 feet. It's this is my style of Pinot Noir, and I'm going to go to the other side of the world now and talk about Australia because I like to talk about when I went out there. But I was at the winery and in Margaret River, and the winemaker was like, "It's nice to be compared to these certain regions, but what I want to be in 15, 20 years' time is I want to pick that people to pick that glass of wine up and go, that's a Margaret River Chardonnay. This is what we've got to be championing in this country. Is go."
But it is hard when you're trying to seek out your own path. And you've got to go down a lot of different routes before you can find the thing which defines you. And if it is all in the winemaking and not so much in the let's say the place it's come from, that's a very hard thing to say. But I get the point. But
I'm 42 years old. No one's defined me yet.
What is an English?
Yeah.
Anyway, for me, that's a pretty good idea,
Yeah,
a pretty good vision of what it could be, what it
YouTube
should be.
We'll get cancelled.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, but I could smash that, or I could have it with food. It's really nice, and it brings us rather neatly onto Oxney, home of Jamie's favourite bench incident,
the great fall of Oxney.
The Great Fall of Oxney. We've had the Battle of Hastings, the Great Fall of Oxney. The Oxney Woodhall Pinot. Now, the astute of you will notice that there's not a... Well, sorry. So I'm just going on what it says on the thing. Woodhouse Pinot, sorry.
Woodhouse.
Anyway, this is another lightly coloured Pinot because it's from England. And I think this also should be lightly chilled. But this is quite a story to this one.
Yes, so
I'll let you. So what the hell?
This is a little bit of a blend. So we're mainly Pinot Noir. We've got some Pinot Precoce and we've got some Pinot Meunier in there. Mm-hmm. But we are from two different vineyards. Sorry, two different vintages.
2 different years.
2 different years, and the wine was done in a Solera type system. Yeah. So there was some wine made, some pulled off, and then it's been topped up with the other vintage.
Yeah, and they are now creating a permanent Solera style where effectively each year you will add some and you will take some off, and I'll add some and you'll take some off, and it blends old and new into
creating a house style.
A house style, and it helps you mitigate against the good year and the bad year. Like you get a little bit of the good year going into the bad year, and the bad year then that stops being a bad year, it becomes a fresher year to give you freshness and acidity, and the good year gives you richer fruit flavors, and the older wine gives you development, and the younger wine gives you the clear sort of really defined fruit flavors. So
and
creates something really interesting.
Champagne does.
That's what champagne does. For some reason, we look down on that in the still wine world, apart from in sherry. But
it's
why not? And for me, if we're going to be talking about, what is where are the kind of points where you can go off and do something really creative and cool? It doesn't get much more cool than that, where we're using a bit of the technique from sherry in a kind of similar way to champagne, but also we're doing it for making a still red wine. Oxney, it's an organic vineyard. They're very low intervention.
Am I right in saying their Chardonnay was
it was the Badger wine,
first 20 point?
Oh, it was. I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was Jancis, but it was the very first 20-point rated English Chardonnay in a major international competition. So it got full marks.
And they made some, but they didn't make as much as they could because a badger came along and ate 2 rows of the vineyard.
Are you sure it wasn't you, Jamie?
It wasn't me. I was too busy falling off the
bench. Yeah. That sounds like a euphemism for something. We've got some questions about oak, so I'm actually going to have to go and have a little look because...
my straight up answer is I don't know, but my guess is if it's been done in a Solera system, it probably started in new oak, but it's now no longer new oak because it's been sat there for the next vintage to go into.
Yes, indeed. I remove something now. We don't have that detail.
So it's.
I tell you what, we'll go and ask Kristen, who's the producer.
It's perpetual. It's perpetual reserve into a Solera system. So it's the same barrel. So it will have started either with a new barrel or a 1 or 2 year old barrel, and then it's not a new barrel anymore. So they're not. It's not the new stuff's going into a barrel and then getting in. So it's just getting topped up. So
it does smell like there's younger oak in it compared to the Flint, doesn't it? There's a little bit more of the vanilla, a little bit more of that kind of just that. Yeah, well, that's like the oaky smell to it.
But it's 2020 and 2022 are the two vintages in this at the moment. So.
Oh, it's good, isn't it? It's really good. More spice again coming probably from that oak, but really, really interesting. Oxney, another very good point. They have some wonderful accommodation in the shepherd's huts, don't they?
They do,
and they are very, very proud of what they do. It's quite low intervention. It's definitely very organic. I'd say there's quite an interesting point there because they are based just north of Rye, and there's another vineyard around there, and I don't want to name names. There's one that was doing an awful lot of natural wines and very creative, funky wines, and who are in that similar area down near the south coast, down near Rye, and I don't like their stuff that I've tasted at all. It's not for me, and we've heard from people who've yes,
nobody knows.
no. Anyway, yes. It's very divisive wine, and it was the kind of wine where when you walked in, if you said you didn't like it, they looked at you like you were stupid and you didn't know your stuff. No, for God's sake, if you don't like it, you don't like it. And it's not saying that it's necessarily bad, but in this case, it turns out they had made some really, really
grave errors
in where they'd placed things like their Georgian kevries, the China, terracotta pots which get buried in the ground. We won't go into that.
Don't get yourself sued.
But we will say that they are on track now to correcting this thing, and so it'll be really interesting to try their wines in a couple of years' time. But yes, not all creative, funky winemaking is going to give you something that's universally delicious. I think these have got broad appeal. So I'm not telling you as a thing of going. Avoid these guys at all. What I'm saying is that it's really interesting comparing different approaches, and these are low intervention, not no intervention.
But I remember, I tasted this wine, and I came back to Alex and said, "I've tasted this cool Pinot Precoce Meunier Solera blend wine,"
and I went,
and he just looked at me and goes, "Oh, and it's really good."
We've got a smell of someone's got pickled gherkins in there. I like whiskey fruit. You're a whiskey fruitcake. Lots of there's still in that kind of cherry space. Of course, I mean it's Pinot Noir, but I just think this two really different expressions of what an English red that can cope with our slightly varying conditions are like. One by focusing on early ripening grapes from the the most ripe part of the country, and another focusing on cool techniques and a blend of different grapes go into it. Both really interesting and delicious. And yeah, I don't know. What do you think? English wines?
Yay or nay?
Yay or nay? Yay or nay? And remember, obviously, we're just talking about like the still ones here. Is this the sort of thing that you could get into a bit more and that you're enjoying trying? Or will you be sticking to the yellowtail?
If not, why not? What puts people on? Is it the unknown? Is it the style? Is it the price point? Yeah. Is it what is it that makes English wine difficult to grow?
Yeah, I'd be very interested to.
Anyway, while people ponder that, should we move on to the quiz?
Well, we've got the wines of the night first.
Have we?
Yeah, I can move that. Shall I move that?
Yeah, let's do the quiz
How
first.
do I do that?
So you just just drag it down from the little buttons, little three dots. You can just drag that down.
I can't. It's on the other side. There we are. Quiz. Right.
Yeah. So we'll do the quiz first then.
Okay. So
as you get logged in, we'll give you 60 seconds to get logged in. The prize this way, it's usually for next month's tasting. You can invite a friend, but it's not this month because next month we have 2 tastings.
Oh, yes, we do.
Because we have our regularly scheduled programming of France.
Oh, yeah.
And then we have our unregularly scheduled Alsace Masterclass. So, if you win the quiz, you get the choice. You get the choice of either giving a French tasting to your friend, giving yourself an Alsace tasting if you haven't already bought one, or if you already bought an Alsace tasting, giving an Alsace tasting to a friend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that sound good? That sounds good. And I'm just going to, while everyone gets in, I'm just going to do my little promo of the day. I'm sure everybody who's on here has already bought one of these. So, our advent calendars, 24 days around the world. There's a map. We know where we're going now. There's a list on the website. We only have about 40 left. So, and we've ordered the wine, we've ordered the boxes. We can't make any more. So, get in, get one. Don't leave it to the last minute. Otherwise, you'll be very sad that you don't get to see me and Alex drinking great wines, dressed up in stupid costumes, touring around the world, making you laugh while also drinking some good wine during December. So that's what we're here for.
Okay, we're all in on the quiz.
Are we in on the quiz?
I see some names.
Let's see if I've updated it and not left the Austrian quizzing from last month.
I think it's looking okay. So we are going to start the quiz now. I don't know what these questions are.
Have they got the big screen up so they can see it?
It should be. So, oh no, they haven't. Okay, see what you mean. Right, John, drag it. So, in which year did the English sparkling wine win more gold medals than champagne at the IWSC? 2005, 2010, 2014, or 2020? I'm sure I know the answer to that one. Interesting.
Well, you can come to the Alsace one anyway, whether you will.
Yeah, I'm kind of stuck with that, aren't I? 2020 is the top answer, but which is the correct answer? 2010. Interesting. So that's intriguing, isn't it? So I do know that sort of around that time we were having a few really good years. So on the leaderboard we have Dave in the lead and followed closely by Theo there. So, but it is early days. We will be getting in there. So the next question. So which of these grapes is used often to produce English sparkling wine? Is it Sauvignon Blanc, Syrah, Pinot Noir, or Malbec? This is very much a have you been paying attention question, or was it Merlot or Chasselas?
Or have you found a weird person, the one person making an English sparkling Malbec?
Yeah. Oh, you're just giving it away there now. Deary me. Okay,
it's
so
Malbec.
We've got 82% saying Pinot Noir, and they are correct. I'm glad because that means you've read your brochure, so happy days.
Or you just knew.
Jumping up to the top by 2 seconds, Theo takes it over Dave, so we're all getting tight. Magda's there as well, B and Colin. Oh, it's all very tight. So, next question. What is the main soil type in many English vineyards, especially in the Sussex and Kent area? Is it clay, volcanic, chalk, or sand? Now, I think you get certainly 3 of those in Sussex and Kent, but one's certainly what
predominantly.
I think predominantly dominates the
you're
wine
going to come and go,
regions.
There's one hole here that's calcareous marl.
We'll dig out our pots from last time, but lots of people saying chalk. They are correct, of course. It is on the Downs, the South and North Downs. Squaries up on the North Downs. Your Rathfinny down the South Downs. It's all very tight at the top there. Okay, next question. What percentage of English wine production is sparkling? Now, that's a good question. So we got 30, 50, 70, or 90.
It's not 100. Because we've had still wine today.
Is this done by volume? Probably by volume, I'd imagine. It's quite interesting tasting the Flint and the Oxney side by side. The Flint kind of seems a bit more austere in comparison, doesn't it?
People are in for the majority are at 70, some at 90, couple at 50, no one at 30. We know it's a lot, but how much is a lot?
It's 70%. Oh, these are high-scoring rounds. Very high-scoring rounds.
Theo ahead by 3 seconds, but the people behind with a question left.
Very close.
But they're much quicker, the people behind.
Okay, all right. So, What is the name of the classification system used for English wines? A PDO, an AVA, a DOC, or an AOC? That's a very interesting question.
AOC, yeah, you know me.
We could say that about DOC, to be fair, as well.
It's just going to go down the line.
So, that's an interesting. We'll probably get a few people questioning this one, I imagine, on the chat. But the main classification system that English wines come under is
out of those four
is definitely.
Oh my word! We're not going to do a quiz again. You write the quiz next time. What is this? I don't like your questions.
Yeah, AOC, Appellation d'origine contrôlée, France. DOC, Italy.
What? No. What's DOC stand for? What are the letters?
Denomination d'origine classificata or something like that. Controllata. Sorry.
American
viticultural area.
Yeah. You can do that in an accent.
And PDO, protected designation of origin.
Of Sussex.
No, that's a PGI, I think. Or is it? Oh, I don't know. I can't remember.
Theo knew.
But
that's all that matters.
So, what is the main challenge that English vineyards face due to the climate? Is it late frost, too much sun, high humidity, or drought? Well, out of those ones...
In this climate, it could be any of them. Go on, say it. Yeah.
I mean, certainly...
I'm making large generalisations
I doubt it's too much sun on the whole. And drought's probably also not going on there.
Why are you giving the answers away?
Well, because we only had 1 second left. But it's interesting because you could make an argument about high humidity in some years
as the main challenge.
But the main challenge is definitely when around about May every year most things die. That's a bit of a challenge.
How many
secondary? But
how many questions
63. Is that? We are on to. Okay, we've got 2 more questions. Okay, so I don't know what happened to the results, but. What year is considered the modern revival of English wine when the first commercial vineyard was planted? 1880, 1906, 52, or 74? This is separating people. Intriguing.
What do you mean by commercial vineyard? Go on, say it. Go on, say it. Ask me what I mean by...
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Is that a tie? There's a tie at 42% of the answers have said 52 or something. This could change everything.
52? Oh, do you know, I was coming down on the 74 side. But yeah, there was that guy, wasn't there, whose name I've forgotten. I should be a lot more prepared on this.
Mr. 1952.
Mr. 1952.
What was that?
Why is it not giving us the results?
Because I might not have clicked the button. But there we go. But this is the final question.
So, who was the first English sparkling wine producer to serve its wine at a royal wedding? Interesting. The one that I was thinking was going to come up there isn't on there. I'm not sure you're right, but because there's one that is a big favourite of the Queen. At the moment.
It was, but that one was not served.
But that was not served, was it? Because everyone was expecting it to be served, and it wasn't.
So we have got a blend between Chelmsdown, Ridgeview, Gusbourne, and Nightingale, but there's only one correct answer.
There is also the one that I was thinking of, which is definitely by royal appointment to the King and Queen, which is Camel Valley, but that wasn't on there. So what's the right answer then? Ridgeview. There we go. We
what does
the
that
CEO.
Do for the winners?
Oh, that's going to randomise it a bit. Oh, popping straight into the lead at the very last moment there, B. Very good.
Well done, B.
Bravo, B. B, if you drop us an email to say, hello, I'm B, I won the quiz. And don't anybody try it because
and for
we'll
Theo,
be checking
Ian,
Theo,
and Magda, speed yourselves up, guys.
Speed up.
Chop, freaking chop is what I would say.
Chop.
But
Okay,
good game, everyone. Let's get on to wines of the night, and then we can let
you all go.
We can see if there's any random last musings in the chat while we pick wine of the night.
Yes, and I'm going to do my usual thing of turning that off while we gather the results in. So yeah, I think Finn's point. Decent wines, price point challenging. And I think the problem is as well.
Where is I'm gonna die.
Where
is the price point challenging? Because if we say this is world class Chardonnay and it's 25 quid, what does world class Chardonnay cost you in California? What does it cost you in Burgundy? Do we have this expectation that English wine should be cheaper because it's local to us? Because when we go to Italy, we drink the local wine. It's €5 a carafe.
Well, I think most people. The problem is. just most people don't drink wine that's £25 a bottle. So when they go into an English vineyard,
it's not about the quality then. The quality is not the problem.
I think we've just got the price expectations.
Would people be happy to drink a lesser quality English wine if it was 10 quid? That's my question.
Well, there's so much competition at that 10, 15 quid price point from all around the world.
Oh, there is. But if it was in that price point, would we support English wine and go, sod everybody else, we'll buy English wine because if it's at the same price and the quality is similar.
But then can it be made at that price point without messing it all up? That's a real challenge. But we've got some great white wines. We've got some cool, interesting wines. We've got some delicious red wines. And, this is coming up very interesting indeed. So keep popping your votes in.
It's all very close.
It's all very close. We've still got 2 people ranking. Okay, all 3 people.
1. Our final rankings coming in.
Intriguing. Because I genuinely thought there were things to enjoy about all of these. It is very, very tight.
Before you pull it up, I've got one more promo to do.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, just because I like a promo. So if you remember a few months back, we did a terroir tasting. We had phenomenal Pinot Noirs. I have just managed to get hold of, and I sent an email yesterday for people who read their emails, but for those who don't, I'm like here. Alexander, who you love the Pinot from, I've got hold of, and I think I've only got about 25 bottles left of it after yesterday's email.
Yeah.
Their 2014 GSM blend. Absolutely phenomenal wine from Washington State.
It goes for about $50 in the US.
And it's $24.95. We've got 20 odd bottles left.
Yeah.
So if you want some, I would buy some right now.
It's a very good wine indeed. So, which brings us on quickly, before we reveal the winners, let's pop the pricing up. Is that the right one? Yes, it is. So, they're all... These are not... They're all similar kind of pricing, but
all premium-ish.
They're all premium, but yes, it very much depends on your perspective on these things. But the Balfour, the Albarino, the very first production of it, very small amount of it made, really cool wine. That is a wine for if you want to go and shout to your friends, I bet you've never tried an English Albarino before, and this one's actually really nice. That's a great one to do. A Bluebell Ashdown White Blend. This is just say you've never tasted anything like this before, and that's only £19. The Osprit Pinot Noir sitting beautifully in the middle, and the Flint Fumé I think is great value at $19.99. I think it's stunning. And then 2 really cool, difficult to make reds that managed to somehow
fresh style,
create that light fresh style, but with enough interest to keep it from being insipid. It's not overworked. It's quality fruit that's gone in there. £25 and £27. So yes, do pop onto the website and have a look and buy yourself. We haven't got many bottles of anything there, so I think we've got about half a dozen of each. Yeah,
if you need
maybe a few more.
Let us know.
We can always get more.
If you want to get cases of it, go to the winery. But if you do go to the winery,
Well, hello, we're back. I don't know if you can hear us now. I rather hope so, but sorry about that. The computer crashed and rebooted. But thank you so much for joining us. Hope you've had a good night exploring some English wines, and we hope to see you all very much.
Come back to say goodbye. Have a great night, and we will see you next month.